created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm. And
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, that humanoid robots or non-humanoid robots, whatever the case is.
But the one that I really gravitated towards was Alteryx. Low code, no code, business intelligence stuff, data science, machine learning, things like that.
Audio, or text, and then there's big metaverse buzz. Everybody knows the metaverse.
Another week of AI.
Oh, what a timing you had, huh?
I made it.
You just went for the coffee and came right back. Awesome. That's awesome.
Well, I cheated on the coffee. I'm here, but I'm ready to go. Yeah.
Oh man, I know John is gonna be like doing at the end of the show because he's gonna be so hyped. We're gonna hype him up.
I gotta get you hyped, man.
I'm with the sheep. He always gets me hyped. We could talk about this. We're always on the phone texting and this type of stuff. So, let's go.
Yeah. He's gonna do the Texas. He's gonna do the Texas one. See, John, we do because in every language, any region you go to, you can say somewhere, right? But it's a different source of emotion, right? The emotion of me, when I say it in my language, it's like I messed up. When the Arabs do it, it's like, they saw a long old friend, and I think in some part of the world they do it because somebody's getting married. So, it's like a whole level of emotions that you explain. And at the end of the podcast, we kind of figure like, all right, now that we did this podcast, what's our emotional level look like, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's draining. It's like, like get it off my shoulder. And then some other time you're just pumped, right? Just like you started, pumped. You're still excited because it captures the good emotion. So we've been doing this for so long now. Most of the time, I would say we're very pumped that let's go. Like a Spanish Mexico or something like that. You go and party with that.
Well, in Spanish, it's got twofold, right? Because it's like the party version of it is like what you probably hear. Everyone's celebrating, right? What I just did, and then you have the other part of it where most Mexicans or Latin, they're like, it's like, oh, here we go. It's like, oh man, we're done. So there's definitely a wide range there for
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I want to bring in John here for a quick introduction because John has an extensive knowledge of both being in the military and working overseas, working all throughout the States. I want to make an intro to John because when we talk about artificial intelligence, we don't just talk about technology here. This is people's lives that we're talking about, right? People's well-being, people's psychological safety, workplace safety, but it's a societal thing, right? The society is changing because of artificial intelligence. Society is going to be impacted by artificial intelligence. So I have this one clip that I want to show everybody, and of course, I want to talk about the reason why I'm going to show that video. But first, I want to bring in John and have John do an introduction because me and John go way back, not as way far back as Lucky. But when I met John, I kind of had to step my game up, I would say. Step my game up to say like, all right, this is a techie, he knows his stuff. He's very sharp. And, if I'm going to challenge myself to teach a techie about AI, I better bring my game, right? So, John, if you don't do the justice of introducing yourself properly, I'm going to do it for you. So bring your bragging, bring your full credential. Otherwise, I might have to, add them in, at the end of your introduction.
Okay. He says, so, we'll pop the collar.
Pop the collar.
Thank you for inviting me here and humbly grateful. Like you always bring me into these great communities and just learning experience. So as you said before, military background, started out medical supply, 92J, and then went on to petroleum fuel, played in the sandbox a little while. And then when I left, started out as a chemistry degree, went to pharmacy school, and then took a pivot over into the financial world and started developing and working with some clients as far as building out a fund and some infrastructure projects. So in that projects, I dealt with a lot of technical stacks, looking at them, the security part of that, how they would implement that, how they would scale it, how the SaaS models would necessarily be implemented in that. So I started working with the cloud quite extensively, particularly with AWS, was one of the main providers that we would work with a lot on the enterprise side of it. After I left that, opened up my own boutique and been dealing with clients with them ever since then, and started building out more infrastructure around the healthcare space. So implementing that data again with AWS, transmitting that data from anything from biomedical and life science companies with trial drugs in particularly, all the way to medical tourism overseas with elective surgeries, working with insurance carriers and moving that data necessarily so it could be billable or an insurance is, or they would be cash pay necessarily, cutting down that cost of what those elective surgeries would be here in America to overseas providers. And then implementing something throughout the pandemic that Ashif has been working on, and he looked at our own tech stack, implementing with and XR, and particularly with augmented reality. So not only with the virtual part, because of COVID, people couldn't do the in-person learning and things of that nature. One of the criteria, especially in the competency side of the healthcare world, was they had to have that continuing education so they could do the virtual training, but they couldn't do the physical training part of it. So we thought of a way of how to make it more interactive with the augmented reality, and then developing it through what we'll talk about tonight of some use cases, finding out those pain points, those pivot points, and those business models of how to make that. And the chief, as much as he says I challenge him, he challenged me in that think tank too, to, think about those things and everything like that. So iron sharpens iron theirs. But yeah, that's a little bit of background about me, and I hope I did justice so Chief doesn't, come in and knock me out. So there we go.
You skip few things, but I think it's going to come out through the conversation because it's important that we understand how challenging it was for me to talk to a techie and have that technological conversation between two individuals that can say we can see eye to eye on things, but here we have a huge gap that we're trying to fill because I come from one side and you come from the other side. But now imagine, like I said, the societal problem is that if we have this much problem between techies, what about the non-techies, right? How difficult is that? The difficulty in that conversation alone is a lot. But now imagine we live in two sides of the world and we work remote and we are not seeing everybody all the time. So we don't have that water cooler sort of gossiping session where we're talking about like, hey, this is what I'm doing with AI. How does it work for you? Or if it doesn't work for you, tell me now, because I can take that comment and do something with it, right? Just you can imagine the stretching of that scenario to say, not only do we have no communications, but we're having no communication about something that is very sensitive, right? It matters in society. It matters in people's lives. It matters in business. It matters in all the processes that we have worked through for hundreds of years now, right? But before I do that, I kind of want to bring Lucky in as well, because I know Lucky sees that training side of things a lot, right? People dealing with people all the time, people not only just teaching them, but managing them. Because I know, in the cybersecurity space, you do that, Lucky. I want to hear your thoughts on that. But let's take an opportunity to also make an intro as well, Lucky, because I don't know who's watching, but most of the people that are going to watch, they're probably going to see II for the first time because we have a cool program and we have you as a coach and a mentor. So we would like to make that intro as well, along with John.
Okay. Well, I've worked in the medical space in the government for over 28 years, 28 years, contractor now as a government employee. But I've also worked teaching for over 15 years and 8 years specifically at Divergence, where we teach many different disciplines from cybersecurity to artificial intelligence, and that's where I met Asif and a lot of the great people that I work with on a daily basis. But my goals in life are really to educate people on the different parts of cybersecurity or artificial intelligence, understanding maybe bridging the gap, because a lot of this stuff just seems like it's rocket science or another language, so to speak. And in life, things aren't that complicated. Yes, you got to put in some work. Yes, there's some new things you got to learn, but we're all able to kind of figure this out together. And that's the goal of of III AI is III. Yes, we figured it out, or III. Yeah, there's some stuff that we got to work on, but we can talk about it, and that's the goal. But that being said, we're gonna try to spend some time talking about the positives. Today we have a great we have our host Asif, but a great guest in John, and we'll see what we can learn today.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the reasons I'm very excited about today's conversation is because for the last 5 years, we've been engaged in so much education. It has come to the point that you can't keep educating the way you've been educated, right?
Yeah.
So that was the whole premise that when I first got started with education, is I went to the traditional system of learning, and then when I didn't have much time, traditional way of learning things had to stop because you can't really make the time for it. So the Smart AI community, idea was that how do we do non-traditional learning, but non-traditional learning through collaborative ways where it's fun, it's enjoyable, and then you don't have a structured period of time that you have to study and learn, right? You're learning as you go, and you're trying to put together this big piece of image in your head so that way you are able to identify what's what, right? Where's the jigsaw puzzle and where does it fit? So 5 years ago, it started off about the cybersecurity using penetration testing using AI. So that was a very small team, totally not uniformed at all. And I was just like, what are you doing? You can't do anything. Well, what do you know? We don't know anything, all sorts of miscommunication. But the second year, it got a little bit more of cohesive. And the third year, it was like, it just mashed. The third year, we did Alzheimer's dementia research with about 6 data scientists, 2 cloud engineers, and one project manager / data scientist. So that mashed really well because we found out what a disaster you run into when you have a very brand new team, and then the communication is almost non-existent because of location, because of inability to really learn through each other's perspective, right? So there was a siloed learning from everybody. Everybody's a data scientist, so everybody's communicating, but everybody's communicating over each other. And that opened up a light because the whole project turned into, like, halfway through it, we had to really turn the switch on and off and restart again, right? Because what we started off within the project, we really said, okay, let's bring in the subject matter experts from outside and see how they would give us a feedback. And through that feedback, we learned a whole lot about where to turn the switch off and turn on the other switch on the other side. And then the fourth year come, we did literally the opposite. We said no data scientists, right? Anybody that has just a keyboard and a Zoom link can join. They don't have to have any tech background. And that was, I would say, a moment of like reckoning, realizing that like how little we can communicate actually, right? Because me and John talk, we love it. We both agree and head nod. We understand each other, right? But there's terminologies that we don't realize that nobody else uses, right? It's kind of like that military, right? When I got out of military, they had to train me like, hey, you can't say that in civilian work because nobody understands what that means. So as a civilian, you have to use those non-military terms. So long story short here, 50 years later, we're trying to say like, okay, what have we learned so far? Because we did another try about last couple months ago, where we tried, a different approach. We try to mix the interest of some like college students to say like, how do we do college students only? Like age difference. That was really something that opened my eyes again, because we tried the techies, we tried the non-techies, but now we tried somebody that's almost 20 years younger than us, at least 15 years younger than us, and trying to communicate with them about what they know and trying to get them to communicate, because they're the Gen Zers and we're the millennials. That age gap was astonishingly difficult, right? Because they understood technology far better than probably most of the other people I've dealt with. Non-techies, most of them are. Some of them have just social media skills that I don't have, right? The technological background that I don't have. So this time around, we're going to challenge ourselves even further. We're going to do something that is age gapped, right? Like, we're going to bring in somebody who's in a different age range, total different age range, and total different background. We're going to mix the personas, right? Not just all data scientists, but we're going to maybe bring in one data scientist, one techie, one subject matter expert of something that is non-techie completely, and try to see how they can mash through communication to teach each other, right? And that's what has actually happened over the last 5 years, is that we really learn from each other something that we couldn't have paid a professor or a school or a coach or a consultant to do. Because it was a sort of like a collaborative ecosystem where the information just flew out, right? Because we had to say how we can contribute, right? And once somebody saw that contribution, they contributed. Now you had a table full of ideas and table full of information. Now, as a round robin goes, we are picking off of each other's subject matter expertise and say, how do I leverage your subject matter expertise to answer my next question, right? So, I think, John, I think you've seen some of that, but we did it in a closed door center session. You want to recall that session we had where I think the other gentleman said, I thought I knew enough about tech because I was a project manager. Then I realized as a project manager, I even scratched the surface probably.
Yeah, I believe he was a project manager coming in and implementing or staying up with the technology that we were talking about.
Right.
And as technologies evolve, and as we're just sitting here right now, staying abreast to that, and then having to deal with the new workforce coming in and what they had and the new innovative ideas, it kind of shocked him in that capacity. So that was an eye opener to him, just like it is as we see out there in the field too, with me being a lot younger than most of my counterparts, that I'm going out there and speaking to them, and they're mostly on some legacy systems in particular, especially like when we talk about like the cloud or anything like that, and how they have to be agile and be adaptable to these new situations.
I gotta play something from Jensen Huang, and maybe we can take a round robin way of discussing that, because it's about 6 minutes long, but I think it conveys a message that I think all three of us are, sort of have like a national security background of some sort. Like, we really cared about, geopolitically taking the position for ourselves to say, how do we really protect us, right? Because, we have a military veterans background. So, so this is important to me. Let's check it out and see what we can get out of this one. Give me a second while I play it.
And get technological advances and
This is,
thinking about how to do that, how to build this
answering
infrastructure.
about his
We have to be
question
thinking
about
about
how
risks all
China's
the
doing.
time too.
Yeah.
What's at the top of your list in terms of risk assessments when you're looking at these things that pose a risk, pose a threat to the growth that you're talking about?
Well, there's a lot of technology risk, and there's a lot of product design risk. There's a lot of those kind of things, but those kind of things are things we're good at.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, our company is good at building technology and building products, and so we're good at those things, and we'll continue to be careful and thoughtful about doing those things. The things that are hard for us, that are new for us, are geopolitical risk, and it's out of our control. And the best thing that we could do is just inform policymakers and governments about the nature of AI, why it's different than previous technologies, to be accessible to them, to be informative to them, and then help them shape policies that are in the best interest of the world, the best interest of the countries.
So how far ahead of China do you think we are in terms of AI development at this point? How close?
Depending on which layer of the stack, but overall, I would say we're not far ahead. If you look at the entire stack, they're way ahead on energy. I am so happy that President Trump leaned into pro-growth, pro-energy growth, so that an entire industry above it could grow. If you could just imagine, without President Trump's pro-energy policy, that entire layer above the energy would have been constrained. China's well ahead of us on energy. We are way ahead on chips. They're right there on infrastructure. They're right there on AI models. Our models are better overall. OpenAI's is better, Anthropic's is better, Gemini's better. However, their open source models are well ahead of us. And then on the application layer, we have to be quite mindful because their applications are very fast moving. Their society is very quick in adopting new technology. They're under-regulated they don't regulate heavily at the industrial level. And so the applications in China are advancing incredibly fast. This is an area that I'm quite concerned about. I hope that American companies and American society are going to be fast in adopting AI applications, because ultimately this industrial revolution wins at the AI application layer, at the diffusion layer.
There was an analyst just this week who said that he's anticipating China will get NVIDIA's Blackwell chips by as early as next year. Do you think that's the case? If we are way ahead of them in chips, what should our strategy be? To give them better chips, or risk having them build their own chips that are better? But if we hold the advantage here, how do we, as Americans, think about this?
That's right. This is where a nuanced strategy is necessary, and we have to take a step back. President Trump had a AI Action Plan Day, and that AI Action Plan Day, he was very clear, and it's a very thoughtful and very America win around the world strategy. Ultimately, he wants America to win the AI race. So the question, when you take a step back and ask yourself, what does that mean? At the chip level, you want to have the most advanced chips. We want to make sure that the United States and American allies have the most advanced access to the most advanced AI chips. On the other hand, in order to win the AI race, you need to have all of the world's AI developers to be building on your platform. Just as we would, if you're an app store, you would like all of the apps to run on your app store. If you're an operating system, you would like all the world's applications to run on your operating system. If you were a chip, an American tech stack, you want all of the world's AI developers to developing on your American tech stack. That's true whether we're here in the United States or whether it's developers in China.
But
so this
from a defense
nuance,
perspective, we don't want them having the chips that are as great as we are, because we don't want them having access to that, particularly when it comes to the military.
No government, surely Chinese government, is going to be building their defense on Western technology. Nor does the Pentagon use Chinese chips to build our national security. And so they have plenty of chips themselves. Don't forget that this is a country not without any chips. They have Huawei. They have really, really sophisticated and really entrepreneurial startups building AI chips. They're manufacturing lots of chips. And so the fact of the matter is their military has plenty of access to their own chips. What we need to do is find a nuanced strategy that allows the United States to stay ahead, but for American tech stacks to be used all over the world so that the world builds on the American standard.
Are we on the way to being that global standard? I mean, you keep hearing about sovereign AI, and it seems as if there are these interests in creating parallel kind of AI ecosystems.
If we don't win around the world, someone else, if we preclude other people from building on the American tech stack, they'll have to use some other stack. I think David Sachs had a really simple KPI. He said, in 5 years' time, if the American tech stack is 80% of the world, then we are doing a good job winning the AI race. If the United States is 20% of the world, then we've lost the AI race. Now, one of the things that's really important is that developers are all over the world. 50% of the world's AI researchers are in China. China is 30% of the technology industry, technology market. The Chinese market is large. They've got 1 billion users. And so it's not a market that you could easily decide to walk away from if your ultimate goal is for America to win the AI race. Giving up 30% of the world's market right from the get-go, and then not allowing American technologies to diffuse and be proliferated around the world, we are essentially isolating American technology into America and forfeiting and conceding the rest of the world to everybody else. And I think President Trump would say that that would be not a condition for America to win the AI race. And so we have to find a nuanced strategy that allows America to have the best technology, earliest technology, but also to win AI developers around the world and win AI markets around the world.
Yeah, well,
Monday.com.
well said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, articulated very well. I think the main point that I wanted to talk about is that the tech stack and the application layer and the adoption amongst people. Like he actually stressed it like to a level that I thought it was important for everybody to hear, because if you do adoption nationwide in all population in all segments, you have a winning race that will say now we can do 80-20%, because if the American consumers are adopting, that means the American consumers are on par with the rest of the world, and those consumers are consuming American tech, right? And then you have that 80-20 balance as it needed, right? And then on the flip side of it, somebody else wants the 80%, correct? But if we have to use that 80%, that 80% comes with some adoption issues that we should not be even having nightmares about, because that's just bad. Yeah. Like that tech stack is not something that we want to use as a 20% user.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, whenever Microsoft first released their first platform, their first operating system, Basic 1.0, and they couldn't sell it to anyone, so they gave it away. They said, look, if we want everyone to use our platform, let's give it away. And they gave it away to Commodore 64. And that was the first and the only time they gave a perpetual license away for free. And Commodore used that as a base operating system for pre-basic or basic. And people were developing on it. So I think the opportunity is you got to have, like you said, it can't be a nuanced strategy. It's got to be something that's stepping outside the box, giving away. I think that if the big thing with getting developers on board is giving them an architecture that they can build on easily, and give things open source. And if we can win that market, if we can make it easy, give it away for free, that's a pretty good strategy. And then once you got them hooked, we'll do like anything else. Well, you got them hooked, now you're mine. We can keep you hooked forever. But it's one of those things that we got to be open with our technologies. We can't hold them close to the vest and say, hey, this is going to be a subscription charge like they do now. Everything is a subscription charge. So I think that as long as we give away the knowledge and give away the vision, but give people an opportunity to be able to develop things easily, that's going to open up the roads. I think we like things that are easy. We like things that are good. And if it's both, it's an easy win. But I remember as a kid learning pre-basic, and I could go to the library and get a book on pre-basic, and I could write Pac-Man. And for a kid that was poor, or Dig Dug, I could write any video game. As long as I spent 5 days writing it, I could write it, even at 7. That was amazing. And so I could never afford an Atari and a video game, and I could never afford a PlayStation, or what was it, a Sony. Anyway, they're different gaming systems. I could never afford that. But that's how you lock people into a certain area. You keep people out. You don't give them the availability to access the technology. Commodore blew up, and then Microsoft blew up because of the operating system. And then all of a sudden now that pre-basic operating system that they gave away for free became a platform for Microsoft to build the corporation, the company that's there now. And that was a strategy that worked for them early on. I think we need to be able to adopt something, not so nuanced, but something that's very thoughtful to be able to keep people in. I like AI, and I found that AI is there's a lot of different ways of deploying it and using it where it's quick. I think I like that, and that's the benefits, but you have to be able to understand how it works. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. John, What do you think?
No, you hit it on the head right there, because that's what I see a lot. It needs to be intuitive, but it needs to be open and accessible to a lot of people, because as much as we talk about it and they hear it in the news, as you saw it in their segment out there, people still aren't using it. Whether it be even just ChatGPT is as simple as that, with that easy access, and it has some features, but then the limitations come in where after you do so many queries or things of that nature, it shuts you off, and then you go to the subscription model, and then there may be some hesitation there necessarily for them to go further in it. But I think that's from our standpoint, from a security standpoint, from an American standpoint, if we had more adoption, as you see our counterparts have that adoption at that level in a broader sense, and then it's massively adoptable, then the use cases come out, the creativity comes out. For there, our limitation stops at a certain point, because at some point they want us to put our credit card down, and there we go again with, then it's the pushback and the hesitation on our side. But yeah, the adoption and the use case, what you say from that application. And what's interesting, what he was saying too, with the application side of it, and I'll tie it it'll tie it all in together. I don't want to go too far in it, but was around crypto in particular, because crypto, a lot of the dollars were flowing in during the pandemic and everything like that into crypto projects that had AI components in there, but there was no real use cases there, or the application layers there also necessarily. So as this next wave came around and all of those basically worthless coins, worthless tokens, worthless projects went away, now the investors got smarter, the AI got more smarter. You're on your fifth, sixth, third, or seventh model at this point. And now what they want to see is an application layer where they are going towards, and they need these chips and everything like that to develop that out from a digital standpoint with these applications, whatever they're doing, whatever use case it is, whether they have entertainment value, medical value, anything like that. All of this ties into that with that application starting at that critical point.
Yeah. I mean, John, you hit it. And lucky you hit it, because you talked about open source and you're talking about crypto adoption, right? I mean, if the way of AI goes with the crypto history goes, that slow adoption and then lots of missed opportunities, right? AI probably can sustain it a little bit more because AI has been around for hundreds of years at this time, right? But it does go through a disastrous thing called AI winters. So AI comes and goes over every decade, and they have a lot of promise, which we call the AI summer, and then it goes away because people realize it was a false promise and didn't really deliver. So when we talk about these age differences and gaps, certain part of the generation looks at AI and says, wow, AI is brand new, I love it, I'm 20-some years old, I use ChatGPT all day long. And then you have somebody who's holding all sorts of cash in their hands, that expendable incomes that they have, they're not expending on a subscription for ChatGPT, right? Because there are certain age that they will say, it's not worth my money because I've been through this hype before. It's going to die off soon. But every time it dies off, it leaves a residue, right? It leaves that next trail that picks up. So I'll give you one example that everybody kind of flips their eyes about, is that when was the time when we did an image recognition of a cat and a dog? What year was that? How do we use an image to figure out what's a cat and what's a dog? That was back after World War II, before 1950, right? That's how old this image recognition system that AI uses today is. Why is that? It's because it improved over time, and it improved because of something that Lucky said, it's open source. You cannot put a copyright on statistics. You cannot put a copyright on machine learning. Anybody and everybody can do machine learning. But once it's open source, everybody jumped in to say, if I have this one problem, how can machine learning or the neural network of AI can fix that? And if it can fix that, where is the bottleneck? The bottleneck, and again, kind of going back to that crypto, the adoption part of it, is that this bottleneck is always the hardware. Right, and that's what Jensen Huang talked about for the last 4 minutes of the conversation, is that if I have the stack of the hardware, and I mean hardware as in, if I pick up this hardware and I drop it, my foot is going to hurt. This is not a vaporware. Like literally, this is a bare metal that you have to buy, and that's when things gets real, right? Because if you have that bare metal and you're running your AI on that bare metal, By the way, I gotta admit, Lucky's like, here he goes, Asif again, talking about his favorite subject of hardware, which I do.
Hey,
all the time.
look, the AI's got to run on something that's got some kind of electrical signal, and it's physical. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think the AI adoption really relies on this hardware piece of it, because the phones that we have today have AI, but our IoT devices without AI, because it's not able to run those AI systems in those IoT devices, we're falling short, right? So when we're talking about China, that's one of the advantages that you will see is that Chinese hardware, and I don't mean as in the chips and the chips that comes in a box, right? I'm talking about the total hardware, the vehicles, the amount of technology that uses those chips, those hardware, those physical things that can run you over with the wheels are literally AI, operated, right? So what you're seeing is the differences between your phone that has AI, but everything else is just still dumb, even though they're called smart. They're smart, but they don't run AI application on them yet because of whatever is holding them back. And there's a whole other reason behind it. But kind of going back into the military part that he mentioned, let's say, for example, FPGA. I'm going to talk about FPGA quickly because it's important to discuss the fact that this small hardware is all the difference makers, right? You can have the oldest ancient technology in the world, as long as you can have some chips inside of it and electricity going through it, you can turn something and make that old machine work, right? But it's not worth it to put that much money into a chip and an old machine, right? So you have to really invent the whole ecosystem, reinvent the whole machine that goes with that AI. So FPGAs, these military capabilities that FPGA brings, which is that, if it burns, it burns. No enemy can access it. No technology is lost, right? Because we can take that overseas. These FPGAs are, expandable. That means, it's very cheap to make, but it's also, programmable to devices, right? So long story short, you have smart devices that are AI enabled, and the rest of the other devices are not AI enabled. So we really have to take charge of all the IoT devices that is in the market right now. Those 3 billion phones, and then billions of other IoT devices that are out there. We have to AI enable them. And America has that challenge right now in order to have those things AI enabled. And we have NVIDIA, we have TSMC, we have Samsung, we have all these companies that are racing to build the chips that has enough instructions in it that is easy to handle inside of a chip. So that way, those systems, no matter how old the IoT system is or whatever the IoT system is, it's able to run a good, smart AI system in it, right? And of course, AI is a broader term here, the umbrella term. But the point I'm trying to make here is that this hardware and the software and the data are worthless if the consumers are not able to demand it. Consumers have to design it. Consumers have to demand it. They have to design and demand it and say, now I have enough confidence to deploy it, right? So that consumer education part of it is what I'm going to pick up on next. But Lucky, what's your thought on what we're discussing so far?
Well, there's a lot of different things that you covered there. I think that the AI itself is there's a lot of AI becomes this black box of what is it, right? But what you covered, it makes it real simple. Okay, we have devices that are IoT devices that are more like sensors. They're like dumb terminals, right? And all they do is give you the inputs, bits of data that feed an algorithm, a larger algorithm that helps, provide information in different ways or take action in different ways. But it becomes an algorithm that has statistics. Basically, we're working on statistics, and that's the big thing. If people, I wish they would understand, is artificial intelligence is more of an algorithm that helps you understand data better, that helps you see what's not easily seen. You use different algorithms, statistical models to be able to arrange the data in different ways. And I think that's what we overcomplicate that. So, like, give you an example. 10 years ago, I forget what the number is, Asif, but do you remember we used to talk about when we first started our podcast, how many AI projects would fail? I think it was like like
83 to 17%, like
83 to 17%. And this was back in the day when AI was difficult, where, you were either using deep learning, or you were a data scientist, or you were a data warehouse manager, or you were dealing with large amounts of data. And you're using like linear regression or clustering or some kind of statistical model to be able to look at data. That was hard. Now we have all these, models that are easy to bring up now. I mean, as long as you just take a little bit of time, you can bring up a model, and you can have a large language model in minutes. And that wasn't available 6 years ago. Now it's like that, boom. And that's that. I think that's a big growth. But even still, to this day, 95%. I think was the MIT put out a new stat. 95% of all AI projects fail.
Yeah.
How are we failing when we have better tools? And that's what kills me. You know why? It's because people have this unrealistic expectation of what AI is. Their strategy's still not right. They're like, hey, just give me some AI over there and make the AI do the AI stuff, and then we're going to be better from it. But they have no real clear strategy of what AI is going to be doing in their business, or how it's going to help give them something better. And that's where I think we lose. I get that. I design AI models. I work in government. I deal in developing large enterprise solutions, and I've gotten this from my leadership. We need AI. Well, what do we need AI? Well, we need it. We just make sure that we have AI. Have no idea of what we're going to be doing. And then when I tell them, this is what we need to do, we need to use open source, we're going to invest on our people, not buy something, then it goes completely over their head, and they don't want it. They just want to buy it, have a checkbox, and be done with it. We have AI now, but they have no real reason or no real idea how AI is going to make things better. And I think that's where we get lost.
Yeah, my AI is like my hot dog, right? No ketchup and mustard.
Yeah, exactly. Where are we going with this? It's like, we got to get in the car, but we got in the car. Everybody in the car. Where are we going? I don't know. Let's get out of the car. We have nowhere to go.
It's the hot topic word. Everybody's throwing it in. If you want to throw AI on everything and anything right now, it's like barbecue sauce, or like you say, ketchup. Everything tastes better with bacon.
Just they have no idea that it's not breakfast, but we can still slap it on there. No, but getting down to, I think that AI has a lot of benefits long term, and we should be in a better place to be able to take advantage of AI. But I think we still have to be able to educate people on, okay, where are the areas that we can really, and I think I'm a huge advocate of open source. That's where we need to really spend our time. These black boxes now, and they're not really black boxes, but the way I consider ChatGPT, right? You can have it out in the public sector, you can have your own version, but even still, when you have it in-house, you have to enable the subscription, and if you don't pay for it, you don't have it anymore. Well, what is that? You know what I mean? That's just a business model to keep someone else fed, and you're not really learning. I think that we need to keep it open. But anyway, you guys, what do you guys think? I said I've talked enough.
I think Chief hit it earlier, what you were going to, because I do see that out there. What was it? People, processes, and then and then the last component.
People, process, technology.
Yeah. So when you throw the people in there and the process, it's like you say, everybody's saying the AI, but what are you really trying to achieve out of that? What are you looking for? What in define? And I know and this is a cliche thing. What is AI to you? Because what AI means to me may be different than something else. When I input that query, am I treating that like I'm still on Google and I'm just typing in something and now that AI comes out like that? Or what am I looking to do with AI? I've had people come up with chatbots. Okay, what does that accomplish at that point? You've been had chatbots forever. So what's the difference? And you just throw AI on it at this point. Does it give you more of a better response? What are you doing with AI? What are you looking to achieve? And then, like you say, with leadership, enterprise level, everybody wants to throw this, or I got a next creative project, and just like you'll see the next 1,000 pitches come through on the venture capitalist world. I got AI now. We have the next.
Yeah.
What are you doing at this? Like, what are you doing at this point? I want to change the financial sector. I want it to do what? When you throw it, what is underneath the hood for that? So taking a step back. And that's why I appreciated Chief when I came to Chief's workshop. He challenged me in what I was developing necessarily, because we had to take a step back because it was an astronomical cost when we first looked at that 2 years ago to what it is today. If we would have went forward and we would have been in that 99% tile that would have failed just simply on the amount of the cost it would have encumbered us with, and the dilution of the own company that we would have done. We'd have lost ownership in it. Taking a step back with the Chief and seeking counsel and really, looking at ourselves and thinking about, okay, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? Do we really even need all these components right now? Maybe we take a step back. Maybe we just, take a bite off of here, take a bite off of here, and understand what is this AI going to do? How is it going to be implemented? We went through a whole exercise of the people processes, human in the loop still in that component. For example, with Medical Subscribe in particular, as they're looking at helping out with the medical records as the doctors do rounds necessarily, bringing in AI to help out as they're having a session with the patient to do the Medical Subscribes. You still need a human in the loop to oversee what that AI is doing. That actually takes a longer process than what it currently is right now. It's not advantageous to actually do AI in that capacity right now. They're still working out the kinks in that, showing, people wanting to throw AI on it, but does it really make sense? Is it economical? They're trying to throw a subscription model on it, so people are hesitation on that. So yeah, going back to what we were talking about, and that's coming from somebody that understands tech. Now you throw non-tech people, because now you're saying those people that you're talking to understand none of this. They and that's not their language, and some of them they don't want to learn that. That's not what they want to learn. They want you to come in and put it in the simplest form that they can understand it. So then it's very simplified to them and it's intuitive. So now you have to even scale back a little bit further. What me and Chief talked about. Yeah, we could talk and have all these vernaculars as far as, yes, we can say all these words that we understand, but how do I scale back and talk to an audience that may not understand it in that capacity? So then it resonates with them. So now they're listening instead of it just flying by and they're just hearing it.
Yeah. Look, the people, process, and technology, you cannot stop emphasizing that. It's like, you got to wake up every day and have a mission motto that says people, process, technology. I think that's the beauty of having a conversation where you can get to a point where you can say people, process, technology. Because right now, every conversation that you can start with a stranger or just anybody, they will start with a technology. But like you said, you got to step back and think about, all right, who are the people here, right? Who's that people that I have next to me, left and right, and what's that process in front of me between me and the technology? Because there's a process between you and the technology. And if I can teach one thing to anybody, the success measure, the KPIs of that teaching is that they will stop talking about that technology. They will talk about the process of it, because that process is the AI. I mean, if you're a person, you're a people, what you want to understand is that AI is a process, not the technology itself. Because if the process doesn't change, you can deliver a technology, but that technology will fail 83% of the time, or that 95% of the time. And that's what's happening over and over right now, is that we're delivering a technology, not necessarily a process. And people behind that process is totally not understanding that the process matters, not the technology itself, right? What are the people to the left and right? They matter as much, because once you step back from that process, if they cannot handle that process, that technology, I would not use that word, but it goes somewhere that you're not supposed to go, right? So let me pause here. Lucky, you had something to say?
Well, what do you think is the biggest wild card then? The people, the process, the technology, or is it more the strategy? I don't know if strategy falls into, but okay, what do you think is the biggest wild card? Because for me, as a developer or as a data scientist, my biggest barrier or roadblock was not the process, not the people, but looking at the data quality or the technology. But then again, I play a different role. You know what I mean? So what do you think is the biggest wild card in the success of an AI solution?
Yeah, I think the wild card is the right way to put it, right? The situation that you just mentioned, right? We can all say, if I step away from this process will fall apart.
Yeah.
So that's your baby that only you know how to raise it, you know how to take care of it, but everybody else kind of doesn't care for it. Mm-hmm. And that's a step that we always have not had in what? IT ops and DevOps, correct? Network ops, IT ops, DevOps, they've been around for a long time. We are moving from DevOps into ML ops, AI ops, and those sort of things, because the operation is changing, the process is changing, right? So this process, as it changed, I want to use a terminology that every developer probably knows very well. It's the KISS, right? The KISS method.
Yes.
Keep it simple and stupid, right? Well, in MLOps space, this is the process that I talked about earlier, is that if I can have you understand the value of the process more than the technology itself, the process has to have an answer, the wild card called KISS for AI, which is keep it interoperable, scalable, and sustainable. If you cannot explain what that technology that you want to be delivered through your people's manual labor to the process, it doesn't make any sense, because you're losing your strategy, first of all, because it's not interoperable or scalable or sustainable. But even if you deliver it today, it is interoperable today, but it's not scalable in the future, because the data feed, the process of data feed is not there. And then the data feed, the sustainability of it, the data is not creating a feedback loop enough to teach it the new system, which is that part that sustains it, right? So even if it doesn't have a strategy baked into it, it's going to fail, because that 95% or 83% that does fail, let's say 95% is Gen AI. That's higher than 83% that is AI. AI and Gen AI, we cannot separate it. But the point is, it's failure regardless, right? Is because even if it's deployed, it underperforms. So even if it has interoperability baked into it, it doesn't have that sustainability of it, because you haven't created that, the feedback loop of the data, right? Yeah. So the data that you have, that's your baby, but somebody else sees that data, they have no idea why that's valuable, and the pipeline stops and feedback goes away, and all of a sudden we're in a disaster call. Our project has failed, right?
Yeah.
So the wild card is KISS methodology, I would say, because not everybody's good at strategy, but everybody's good at understanding what they understand and quizzing other people about what they understand. Because right now the communication is that I want AI because the boss said so. But now if I have to ask myself a question, maybe ask everybody else in the room who's going to deliver the AI, do we really understand what we're doing? Because if we don't, we're going to deliver a hot dog and a ketchup, but that's not AI. That's just a hot dog and a ketchup. You know what I mean?
What do you think, John?
The wild card, I guess it's from what seat that you're sitting at, like you say, from a different component. For me, the wild card really is the education. I have to start at the people. For me, from where I sit, is really the people, because dealing with non-technical people, like if I'm talking to a CIO or CISA or anybody like that, there's some commonality there necessarily. But then when you're talking to the people that are actually going to use that application as they're developing and putting in that input, that's where I feel like the wild card is for the implementation, and the bottleneck is in the AI, as the quote unquote, because we just coined the word AI, but what does that mean to them necessarily in that? And then that repeatable process, because for some of them, you just walk in the building and just cutting on the computer can be frustrating enough to them. And that's just, that has nothing to do with AI. That's just technology. So that learning curve within that capacity of non-tech people, I see it on the wild card as just the people side and in the education. That's what I see on a common basis over and over and over. I had my own family member call me from Hawaii trying to open up the Tesla door, and that was too much for them. They said, so the technology with just people, and that's what I see out there in the field, in particularly with just certain components, and especially depending on what genre that you're dealing with. Maybe the younger, we're more acclimated to technology because we've had tablets in our hands, we've had computers in our hands since birth necessarily. But then when you deal with another population that is not as intuitive with technology, that's what I'm seeing necessarily. Like there still needs to be, some workshops, some foundations that these organizations need to put on themselves and take a step back, just as much as they want to retrain them on different things from a compliance or etiquette or regulation standpoint. They need to really hone in their skills from a technological standpoint of seeing where is this at, how to utilize this, and then retrain them on a consistent basis, because these AI models and what they're doing with these AI models are continuously changing. So this could be a monthly, type of task they need to do, just as much as they're on these Zoom calls and these emails and these meetings for no meetings purposes. They need to have these training that actually is going to be implementation on there. So that's what I would say the wild card from where I'm sitting at that I see.
Well, you just created the biggest bridge I've seen since San Francisco to the next segment here, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to talk exactly about what John just said, education and continuous education. Because the traditional education system requires that you go to school and you apply for the rest of your life, right? And you never go back to school ever again. And that's the possibility that we had lived through for a long time. But I think right now we're coming to a point where it's just like, you don't have to go back to school, but you have to continuously educate, continuously learn, continuously relearn, and possibly unlearn some of the behaviors of a user that has an interface in front of them, right? The UI, the user interface. Because if you don't take advantage of the full user interface, that means the system as a whole kind of falls sideways, because if the system users don't use it, the developers don't develop anymore. And if the developers don't develop, there's no money to be generated. And then the whole system kind of goes like, well, people in Canada don't use it. People in America don't use it. People in Mexico don't use it. And then only some part of China uses it. All of a sudden, if some part of China uses it and everybody adopts a Chinese policy, now we have a possibility of bringing the alligators to the canal that we didn't need to bring, right? We can talk about Huawei. We can talk about WeChat. We can talk about so many apps that Europeans are using today that's not allowed in America. And especially top that off with TikTok, you can't go any further after that, right? Because you already bought the alligator to the canal, or crocodile to the canal, as we say it. So education and continuous education with the purpose of personalizing it is far more important today in a non-traditional system of learning. And that's what we've been talking about with Smart AI, non-traditional system of learning. Because systematically speaking, it costs money to go to school. And it definitely costs money to not go to work and go learn something, even if it doesn't cost money, right? So I think those two things has been our biggest the roadblock to say, hey, if you're interested, we would like to teach you something, but I cannot take time off because that loses me money, and I don't have enough money to go back to school. Why would I lose money while I'm trying to go learn something new, right? But we worked around that, and I think for the last 5 years we've seen that the personal issue play out over and over for everybody, right? So the community or the meetups that we've been doing is called the Smart AI community meetups, and we learn in a very compact manner, and we learn from other people's perspective, right? So we like to mix it up. We like to mix it up with different age group, so that way a grandma can talk about Tesla doors to somebody who's really young, and somebody who's really young and can ask the grandma about, hey, what was that like the first time you saw technology, and how has that shifted? Then you start seeing two different perspectives, and you can mash those knowledge together, right? Because what's important is that we see the full picture, not only piece of it, right? So when somebody sees a Tesla, the reason they see Tesla for what Tesla is because they don't see the rest of the picture of what a Tesla is, correct? No matter what age group you are, right? If somebody sees a Tesla, they will say that's a fast car. Somebody who sees a Tesla, there's a different age range, they will say, well, that car is different than the other cars, right? like there's no excitement in that statement, right? It's all about the image that is not outside the Tesla. So what we do is we create that image in somebody's head, and now they say, oh, wow, I really got to put these puzzles together because now I have some information that I previously didn't have. So what does that mean for somebody who doesn't have that knowledge? Let's say, for example, when we talk about AI, everybody kind of nods their head. That's like, yeah, that's cool. But when I say digital twin, everybody kind of says like, that's too much of a technology. I don't want that. But I'm like, well, digital twin is what you get if you have AI, right? So how can I get you to be interested in not just AI, but the full picture that's called digital twin, right? Digital twin is a all-encompassing, just like AI is, but digital twin is far more important, more powerful, in my opinion, than AI will be, right? Because digital twin encompasses the IoT devices, it encompasses your screen, it encompasses your information system, right? Just any way you want to put digital twin, it really encompasses this whole AI situation. So again, when we talk about Tesla in two different age group, Tesla is just a Tesla. But if you look at the full picture, now you understand what's beyond that Tesla, right? There's a whole electric grid that comes with it. There's this whole charging stations that you have to calculate, because just because you have a Tesla don't mean you can drive more than 300 miles, right? It's going to come to a stop. And if you don't know where to stop, you're going to be in big trouble, right? So security of Tesla is far different than any other car that you can imagine, right? So your Ford Bronco or your Chevy Tahoe has some internet in it, right? Your Jeep probably doesn't. Your Jeep Wrangler doesn't have anything in it. But Tesla is totally reliant on internet, right? And that's how the hackers can hack into your Tesla and possibly take it over if you're not careful with it, right? If somebody has access to your phone, they can do many things that your Tesla is not supposed to be doing, right? So do you see where I'm going with this education piece of it? You got to keep up, right? It's a whole lot of things that are unfolding, but this unfolding rather really, really fast. And that's what we have learned over the years, is that we are educated traditionally, but we really have to get used to non-traditional way of learning, right? So one of the ways that we advocate for non-traditional learning is that we bring in the specialist, right? We bring in the specialist who are subject matter expert of what they do. They're a business leader, they're a business entrepreneur, they're techies, they're non-techies, they're doctors. They work as an engineer somewhere, they work as whatever that subject matter expertise that they have, they all have a frameworks and methodologies that they work with. And what we do is help them understand what artificial intelligence is to them. Okay, that's the key part of it. You have to personalize the artificial intelligence to them, so that way it's personalized and it's catered toward their subject matter expertise. And that's something that will cost a both ton of money to go somewhere and say, I want a consultant that will personalize my AI knowledge. Well, we don't want that. We don't want somebody to spend both a lot of money. We want them to just spend time with other subject matter experts in a small group for a few hours a week. And as they spend that time, they're able to learn from each other and understand that AI requires research, and that research leads to training. Because as you're researching, you're also training yourself, right? You're training others. So we encourage the individuals to come to the table once a week for as many days as they like, because they're going to learn something different every week. But as they come prepared with research, they're able to train others and also be trained as the other people are researching topics that encompasses their subject matter expertise. So it's a feedback loop. It's a cycle of life that we are continuously going to be able to afford to be in a community like this, which we call a community of practice. If you look at the other terminology, it's called community of interest. Community of interest has a specific sort of ways to talk, but they don't necessarily learn from each other. So through the practice, the community of practice is learning from each other's research, each other's ability to be the subject matter expert on what they do and their training. And that has been something that I've benefited tremendously from, and I'm looking to do more of this community of practice, because if you are part of a community of practice, what we would like to do is make you the trainer of the next community of practice that you will develop in your organization. Mm-hmm. So if you work for Toyota, if you work for Lamborghini, if you work for a Ford Motor Company, if you work for a rail station, doesn't matter who you work for, you have enough confidence in your communication capabilities to say, I can bring the techies in my organization, I can bring the subject matter experts, and I can bring the other stakeholders to a community of practice in my organization, because I understand there's a security need for artificial intelligence. There's a need to understand artificial intelligence beyond technology, because it's a process, not a technology. So how do I train my rest of my organization? So there is a good need for us to go through a process of adopting AI with confidence, with high, I guess, a security mindset, right? Because I'm an ethical hacker as a background, so I always want to push for that thing that is, AI is great until it's not. Right. Until somebody takes it over and hacks it or does something to it that, I think the nightmare comes true eventually. So the point of all of this is that it's a weekly organizational meetups where we're not part of your organization, but we would like to enable you to take this community of practice methodology to your organization and have you become the change agent or the advocate for the artificial intelligence in your organization, which is safe, secure, and private, right? So as you can see, the SMART, Smart AI Technology Community. Smart Community stands for specialists that are method-based and has a good advocacy behind it to advocate for their organization through research and training, right? So I'm going to pause here and hear you guys' thought, but I would like to cover what it is that's different this time versus the other 4 years of Smart AI Community, and kind of invite you and your network, anybody who's listening, to take the opportunity to join us, because like I said, it's a community that only requires probably 90 minutes of your time throughout the week. And I think if you do it for at least 6 weeks, you will come to understand something about AI that majority of people cannot Google their way into asking those questions. Because at the end of the 6 weeks, you will ask more questions than Google can answer for you, or even ChatGPT, I would say.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic model, and it kind of brings that whole thing where you can give somebody, I guess a basket of fish, or you can teach them how to fish. There's something that comes that means something from someone that's been down the road of developing or putting together something like this, and it's something called lessons learned. You can't put a price on that. You can't put a price on 3 months of work that somebody did, and all of a sudden they're like, you know what? In 3 months of work, if we would have done this one thing, we would have had, and to get that one thing from those people is the time saved, or the amount of learning is immeasurable. So no, I really support Smart AI and what you're doing, and definitely you're in the right place.
Yeah. John, any thoughts before we move forward?
Yeah, I think the community is great.
Yeah, we lost John for a second. All right, so now that I've talked about the Smart AI community, I guess let's talk about what we're focusing on this cohort, right? Hopefully John will come back and join us again. So this idea that we have to empower individuals because they have to be able to communicate with confidence. If we can give them the right tool to communicate, now they have the confidence. And if they have the confidence, they can lead, or if they don't lead, at least they can participate on the other AI activities like we talked about with the IoT devices, right? If you don't demand it, developers won't make it. And if developers don't make it, nobody's going to put money into it, right? So one of the things that we talk about is the safety, security, and privacy. But the other one that is super important that we talk about is triple E's, which is that how do you create something that is very economical, right? And then has emotional intelligence behind it, right? Something that is explainable, something that's economical, but something that is also emotionally intelligent. As in, a lot of the AI projects do not consider people's psychology of adopting that AI, right? Because in order for the users or the end users or the layman or the person who's most generalist who's going to interact with that AI, if they do not understand AI and the value of AI and how it behind the curtain works, they will tend to not use the maximum amount of feature. We talked about that earlier, but the point is, it's not economical to invest on something that emotional intelligence of other people is not really there to adopt it, right? That's what Jensen Huang was talking about, right?
Yeah.
If you don't adopt it, is because of the explainability was never there. So you have to be able to have an economical case, have an emotional intelligence of the users, and have it to be explainable in a way that is continuously explained, right? As in, you're building up these AI interactions, not over in a 1 week course out of 52 weeks, but rather on a weekly basis, right? You are able to interact with these AI knowledge and improve your understanding of AI, right? So the cohort that we're developing, one of the ways that we would like to challenge anybody that's non-techie is to come at it from the security perspective, as in, you don't have to be a security subject matter expert. You don't have to be an expert of AI. You don't have to be an expert of technology. All you have to be is an expert of something that you are expert of. But to bring that mindset that you will use the AI with those 3 E's in mind, right? You want to be able to explain that AI. You want to be able to, have emotional intelligence behind that AI, which is, you're looking out for the safety, security, and privacy of yourself and others, and then make it economical for your organization or whoever's investing time, labor, and money into it, right? So you're explaining not just AI, but you're explaining those sort of the behind the scene information that, somebody probably will ask at one point or another, right? Because you can explain AI all day long, but somebody that says, why would I spend money on that? Now you really have to have the ability to say, this is how it's economically identifiable. So this AI gap assessment is actually called business impact analysis. But because, not everybody is a business oriented persona, what we call it is the AI gap assessment, right? So even if you don't understand anything about business, but if you're able to understand how AI makes money for somebody who invests in it, we want them to be able to do a gap assessment as something that a business owner will have a consultant come in and do an AI gap assessment, right? Sort of like a business impact analysis. So we want them to understand the gap assessment from security perspective, if not just security, but also that KISS methodology, right? Keep it interoperable, keep it sustainable, and keep it scalable. And then if they're really challenging themselves, they can go into something called digital twin or the Pawn the AI. Pawn the AI is the hackathon, right, which happens every year, where somebody will go pawn a website, pawn an IT system, pawn a whatever. They actually pawn a vehicle as well. They can break into the vehicles and own that vehicle. This is called VCC. This one is called Pawn the AI because they're breaking into the AI and hacking that AI, trying to take ownership of that AI, right? So this is there you go. I love that, right? So I hope Lucky and a group of people with their interest only, it doesn't have to be subject matter expertise. They just have to be able to say, I want to learn enough about it that I will contribute to this group through our research and kind of communicating our practicing of AI communications, develop the confidence. So that way they can say, I don't have to break the AI, but I can at least see how AI can be broken. And I can communicate that concerns to others as well. And then digital twin, of course, is, like I said, it's a very wide topic. It's almost impossible to even explain the whole thing in a conversation. So you really have to pay attention to digital twin on a weekly basis as you conversate about digital twin with the different groups of people, and you see how digital twin applies to them based on their subject matter expertise. If you're in the medical field, you can imagine digital twin being a human body. But if you're in a medical field and somebody is a medical technician, their digital twin is the machine that a medical personnel uses, right? So I always just give you a spectrum of how widely different digital twin can be. Subject matter expertise, even in the same industry. But we have to really understand how digital twin works and how do we demand digital twin, so that way we are able to design it, develop it, and deploy it, and possibly maintain and improve that digital twin experience for everybody, right? So the digital twin, like I said, it's a huge spectrum of topic, but it's very, very much, I would say it's been around for so long that we don't even realize the digital twin most of the time. So we really have to dig it out of wherever that is under and bring it to the surface, because if you look at the $5 trillion company like NVIDIA, that's their biggest bet, digital twin. You're looking at Facebook, biggest bet they have is digital twin. You know, anybody that you're looking at and thinking they're talking about AI all day long, look behind the curtain, it's all digital twin. That's what they're talking about. So really have to do a good understanding of digital twin use cases, AI gap assessment for your organization, for your personal use or for your business use, whatever the case is. But the Pond the AI, of course, is the most technical one, but I would challenge you to try it, because once you understand Pond the AI from a security perspective, you can see where AI investment goes very wrong or very profitable. So yeah, I think I'm really excited about this year's cohort, because we're gonna learn some heavy stuff.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is being able to look at AI. How can you apply it to your business, and how do you get the right return on investment from the time vested in putting together, an AI solution or a capability or a function? As we're older, I think that we remember back in the day, when we went on a trip, we would stop at Walmart and pick up a Mapsco. And nowadays, any kid that was born in the 90s, or maybe we'll just say in generation Y, they all already have a different perspective. And doing something like this is be able to get the different perspectives, the different groupings of people, and say, okay, you know what? We all kind of have an idea what AI is, but how do we get it to work for us? How do we get it to really be successful? And because it's just not a checkbox. Typically never is.
No.
It's not something simple. It's a whole stack of different services, functions, and in getting it all right does take work.
It's a work, but it's recalling the muscle memory of last time of failure, right?
Yeah.
Because in AI space, we talked about that 83% failure rate, 95% failure rate. It's a muscle memory of failing so often that once you get that AI, you actually come to an AI that's actually useful, not the one that's, that keeping up with neighbors and keeping up with Jones's kind of AI, right? That AI actually works for you and works really well for you. So even if it's get hacked, it doesn't make any sense for anybody to hack it or steal it from you. I think that's the win that I would say. A lot of companies can say that's a win. That's a win. Somebody can steal it, but use it, right? It's not made for them. It's made for me. And Joneses, the neighbors, cannot use it.
I've seen that two different ways. I've seen where they say, you know what, we're going to have our own decentralized large language model, and they're like, okay, we're going to go with ChatGPT, and then they enable the subscription service, right? And all of a sudden we have a large language model. But if you ask the large language model who the president is, they're like, it's Joe Biden. Well, how good is the data at that point? It's like, okay, we have a large language model that provides us absolutely nothing.
That's the thing. Like, if you have a let's call large language model is the AI, right? I mean, that's just a way of people's understanding that AI is large language model. So say, for example, you have an AI and that AI is built by you for you. You would prune and you will fine tune that large language model or AI to a point that it knows Lucky and Lucky's kids and Lucky's immediate, that guarded area of wherever that square footage of where Lucky lives, right?
Yep.
Exactly. It knows you and knows every details about you. And if you ask it who the president is, it's going to say president is Lucky. Because that's how it's been trained, right? So Joneses cannot use it, and if the Joneses even steal it, it will keep saying Lucky is the president, right? So that's the beauty of fine tuning and having a guardrail of pipelines that does not lead into Lucky's large language model, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the kind of AI that is possible to make today. And I'll give you one quick instance of that is that, yes, you turn the subscription on, it's not your baby, it's somebody else's baby. You're just watching it for them. And then
Exactly.
you're paying them to watch it, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to that hardware, software, and data, the conversation about I own the hardware and I own the large language model. One thing that is really missed is that every token costs money. So every time you talk to the ChatGPT, it doesn't cost you money today, but it will start costing you money if you had a subscription. But if you had the hardware, which costs money, of course, but over time, that's all yours. Every token that comes through is all free. You can use millions of tokens for free, where somewhere else you use millions of tokens, you got to pay for every 100,000, right?
I'm saying.
It's very
Yeah.
expensive.
So how many questions do I get? You get 100,000, and then you have to pay more money. You have to, or you could have an open source. You can train it any way you want. Ask 10 million questions, and then you're not having to have a subscription service constantly nagging you for more money because you put in the work. But I mean, it's a means to an end. If you need an AI, then you got it. But does it really give you what you want? So at the end, it's like you have to weigh the options. It's not an easy answer. Not an
There's
easy
no
answer.
easy answers, but if you ask a college student, they ask questions that is just not related to a single specific topic, like 9 to 5 work. But if you work in an office and you're in a building and that building has all the things that you need, which is 9 to 5 work, you don't need everything a college student needs. You need that specific AI that does your business process very well and does it with higher efficiency than what it would have been if you were to do it yourself, right?
Yep.
So, your token cost is not millions of tokens. It's just a matter of why does this token goes to waste every time you have to call for a token that lives in California and you're in Texas, right? Why can't that token live in Texas under your basement in your building, and it costs you very little because you can use it for the next 10 years or 15 years versus that one token that costs you so much that you stop using it after a month.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening with even college students, because they're realizing I have this free ChatGPT, but I only used it for a month because after that, it kind of stopped working for me. It really doesn't do much for me. So you're seeing a lot of the subscriptions and things of that nature that is kind of stalling at this point because they cannot come up with more use cases where it's actually useful when it's not personalized, right?
Yep.
If it's personalized, it works totally different. It works like an agent. But if it's not personalized and it's just a bunch of gobbly-goobly that all 8 billion people can use, it doesn't really work for you, right? So I guess I can say I can skin the cat here in many ways. But the main point here is that you just have to know where the cost balloons. Is it economical? And does it have emotional intelligence that you can build a trust with, that you can build that capability of personalizing it so that way, you like it enough, right? And then you keep using it. And then, of course, can you explain it behind the scene where the technology stack goes, who else has access to your information, things of that nature, right? You're talking about your privacy and things of that nature. But yeah, I think this cohort here, if we can get more people to join, we'll definitely have a minimum of 4 per cohort and 7 maximum. So we are about 18 right now of hard yes. That might go down or go up. But the reason it might go down is because we're also looking for personas. We're looking for personas that is different background than just tech. So we have lots of techies that signed up, but we don't want all techies in a cohort, right? Even for Pwn the AI, we want somebody who's not a techie to be the part of that Pwn the AI, either to lead it as a project manager, business decision makers, business leader, to bring their subject matter expertise in the business. I think will drive that whole team of Pwn the AI to actually make different sorts of mission statement, right? Because when you give a bunch of techies that mission statement, they all just work like a techie. They just, I'm going to write the code all day long and I'm going to make it work. Like, no, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for an actually impactful pawning that AI, so that way somebody from outside the technology field can drive the mission statement as well. So I'm very excited, and I'm very excited to have you. I'm very excited to have some of our mentors who will possibly come through this podcast and talk about their mentorship experience. It's going to be very exciting, to say the least.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to get some guests on from the medical field. As a matter of fact, I've talked to a few people, and we'll talk more later about how AI is changing. Just not people that are in technology, but that people that use technology as a tool. That in their daily work as a nurse or a doctor, this is how it's changed their life.
That's right.
AI has, and so anyhow, I'd like to bring a guest next, probably the next, probably 2-3 weeks, but we'll talk about it more.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's a continuous effort, right? This cohort, I think, will have lots of interest. Some people will find out it will work for them. Some people won't, because it's a volunteer or cohort. We really need personas to say, I really have to contribute here, and if I have to contribute, I have to contribute from the core of my expertise, right?
Yeah.
So there's no need to feel like, oh, I'm not medical. Oh, I'm not no. If you're just any subject matter expertise you have, if you can, be passionate about it and contribute through that,
Yeah.
it's all game, because we're going to put lots of expertise in the table and pick through each expertise and teach you about AI in a way that works for you. And that's the whole goal, is that we have to teach to you the way you need to learn it, not necessarily through a lens of a surgeon, right? And if you're a doctor, you understand the patient, you understand the nurses through, healthcare and stuff like that. Yeah, you have to understand it from each specific avenue, right? Each specific perspective. So I'll leave it at that. I'm very pumped, as you can tell. I'm about to burst out in
It's that time, huh?
Now I'm gonna just have to go for a walk because I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. Again, every time we do this cohort thing, it's always very exciting because the learning is around the corner. That's how I call it. This learning is around the corner, because I learn so much every time I do this cohort, just from personality, from the different ways of approaching AI. Even I didn't think of AI that way until somebody said, this is how I do AI. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, different perspectives. I always have I call it robotic perspective, and it's just, to me, it just seems very matter of fact, very straightforward, and it makes sense. Then I get next to other people, and they see the same project, the same whatever, and they have their solution, and their perspective is, because I'm more of a left side of the brain, and then they bring something from the right side, and I'm like,
What?
well, that would work actually better. So if people bring different seasoning to the stew, and sometimes it just makes a better, pot of gumbo. And so I enjoy different perspectives. It makes things, people have different roles, and it's refreshing to have different people give to the same common goal.
That's right. Well, sir, I think AI is out, and
All right.
time to get to work. Get the cohorts in.
All right, brother.
Ciao, sir.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm, and
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, that humanoid robot.